Hello, this is Matthew with Simplilearn, and today we're going to jump in and cover Node.js tutorial. So let's cover what we're going to go through today. So we're going to go through what Node.js is, what the architecture for Node.js is, how you can use Node Package Manager, which is one of the tools that comes with Node.js. It's actually a very important tool. What are the different types of Node.js modules there are? The HTTP module that is defaulted with Node.js, the file system, the events, the Express framework, and working with databases and industry trends. So quite a lot to cover, but we'll get through it quite quickly, I think. So what is Node.js? So Node.js is an open source cross-platform JavaScript runtime, and it allows you to build web applications inside and outside of a client's browser. It is absolutely fantastic for creating web applications. It's a really great way to speed up your delivery. It's also great for developing solutions that are asynchronous and event-driven. And what you'll find is that with Node.js, one of the other things that you'll find is that it's just absolutely loaded with tools that really allow you to accelerate the way that you deliver your solutions. So a bit of history. Node.js was originally developed by Ryan Dahl back in 2009. The latest version, as of this discussion right now, is version 13.3.0. One of the most popular open source solutions out there, just a ton of people contributing to it. So let's kind of deep dive into the architecture. So Node.js uses a architecture what's known as a single-threaded event loop. And this allows it to handle multiple concurrent clients very easily. So if we visualize that, what happens is that you have your requests coming in and you have your event queue and then a threaded pool, which does your computation, database, and file system analysis. And then we have our event loop that just spirals through very quickly and actually helps you manage the transactions. It's a very efficient way of running the communications throughout the system. Node Package Manager is a key tool that comes with Node.js. It has really two functions. One is it allows you to access online repositories such as Express or MongoDB, or it allows you to, and you can go out, you can actually search those for packages online. Go to search.nodejs.org. There's something like 50,000 different packages that you can use. And it also comes with a command line utility that you can actually come in and actually manage your packages. You'll find that with all of the solutions, I think there's about a dozen Node.js videos that we've created, and all of them you'll see that we use npm in every single one of those demos. So it's really key that you have npm. It does install by default when you install Node.js, so you'll have it. A good way to be able to validate which version of Node.js you have is to open up your terminal window and then type in npm version, and that will actually bring back the version number of your npm module. Then once you have npm, you can actually then go in and install a module name right from npm. So installing a module is really easy. You just type in npm install and the module name. The example here is Express, and that installs Express.js. Really fast way of being able to install codes. And what's great about it is that as you're writing out your scripts, you actually can put in the script how to have the defaulted install modules so that whoever takes that package will have exactly the same environment that you're working. So let's deep dive into modules because they're a key component of working with Node.js. And so modules are really just like, they're kind of like JavaScript libraries, so extensions to Node.js. It's just to be able to have a module inside of your application, you have to use the require function, and then you can then specify, like for instance, if it's a default module such as HTTP, then you can just put in HTTP. But if you need to be able to require a module that's outside of the defaults, then you can actually have the install from npm, which we did in the previous slide, actually install what the module is, such as Express. So there are a bunch of core modules. HTTP for a default web server is installed. You also have URL for URL parsing, query string, which allows you to work with methods. But you have here a list of the different types of modules that you can use. So let's deep dive into one of the modules, which is the HTTP module. The reason why I want to deep dive into it is because you're going to use HTTP quite a bit just to get up and running with different solutions. So, as I said, HTTP is a core module. It's really designed for being able to transfer data over the internet as you would with any other HTTP service. It does use the require method so that when you run it, it'll actually have, you can actually require the HTTP module to be instantiated when you're building out your solutions. And the web server then will come up and running. So for instance, in this instance, we could say, we can do a very simple script. We go through first line here as var HTTP equals require, and then it's requiring the HTTP server to be instantiated. And then after that, in line 2, we actually then create a function, and that function is going to have two key elements. The res write posts a hello world comment to the screen. Then we have a end to the response, and then the final line actually will then post out to which port to look for on the local host. So here we have an example of the response. So the local host is going to port 8080, and there we have the text for hello world. Again, really easy. We created a default script and forced the script to post out onto a default port. And we did that all in half a dozen or so lines of code. So let's jump into Node.js file system. So with Node.js file system, it allows you to actually allow you to work with the file system on a computer. Again, it uses the require method to be able to be used in a solution. So if you want to have the file system up and used inside of your code, you do have to use the require command for that. So let's jump into Node.js Events. And so every action on a computer is an event, such as opening up a file, connecting to the internet. Really anything that you do with the click of a mouse is an event. And Node.js has a built-in module that helps you manage and listen for those kind of actions to happen. And so here we have an example of a basic event model inside of Node.js. We have in the top line, we explicitly call out the events so that we know that we're looking for something to actually happen inside of our script. We can create the object for the event emitter, allows us to listen for that. And then we create a function that listens for the handle that gets created. We're looking for what type of event to actually be created. So it's on click event, and that's the trigger. So whenever you go ahead and click on the terminal window, you just click popping out in your terminal. So let's look at Node.js Express Framework. So Node.js comes with a HTTP server, but if you want to really take it to the next level and you want to build out a more sophisticated application, you want to use the web framework that comes with Node.js for building out both web and mobile applications. And so here we're going to require Express, which actually installs Express.js. Express.js is a very popular open source project by itself, but it's bundled into, it can be bundled into your Node project by using npm. And so we step through. The first line actually goes out and calls out Express to be installed. And then we put together our function that does our requests and responses that get managed from Node.js. And that allows us to have our objects go back and forth and be passed within a web server environment. In this instance, we're actually listening to port 8081 on our default host, and we're actually using server.address to listen for our host and our port on our server. And we're able to then dynamically create a console message. So if we look at the example here, now we've actually got a console message that's popped up onto the screen that is which is dynamic to our own individual environment. So if we were actually to move and be posting and pushing out our solution to a different named server, then that named server would appear on our console. And here we have our message as it appears printed from the web server onto our browser page. Now, you may wonder, why would you use Express.js? It seems to be very similar to the default HTTP server that's bundled in Node.js. The reason why is that you can build just more sophisticated applications with Node.js than you can with just your traditional, the default HTTP service. So let's jump into Node.js with databases. Node.js, as you can imagine, can be used with a lot of different databases. A default is MySQL, but you can also use MongoDB. There are connectors for both that make it very easy. So for instance, with MySQL, you can actually just use the MySQL connector and it will install MySQL and you can be up and running and connected to MySQL in really minutes. You don't have to wait for a long time to set up a server environment and get it running for what you need. The same is true for MongoDB. MongoDB, the difference between that and MySQL is MongoDB is a NoSQL environment. We actually have a MongoDB video where it shows Node.js and MongoDB working together with each other. I highly recommend for you to check that out if you want to see how that works. And as you can imagine, putting in MongoDB is also very, very easy. You just put in the variable to require MongoDB, and in the terminal window, you would just do npm install MongoDB. You actually install the full MongoDB environment on your local machine so you can actually do your development testing. And you then have to use the MongoDB Compass tool to be able to access and view your solution as you're building it locally. So let's go through a demo of putting together a very simple weather application using an API that allows you to see how you can actually control Node.js with your own scripts. Let's go and create a Node.js weather app called Weatherly. So what you can see is we just put in a address and it came back with the degrees Celsius in Bangalore. And you can put in New York and select weather, and we're actually pulling against an API here that allows us to get the actual temperature. And so here we have, it's 22 degrees in New York City right now. So let's go ahead and show how you're going to build this out. So the first thing you want to do is we're going to use Node.js. That's what we're building all of our solutions on. Node.js, which is nodejs.org, is the website. And you have options for downloads. We're going to go with the latest download. You also have download options where you can download for other operating systems. By default, when you actually go to the website, it'll detect which OS you're running and give you the appropriate download, but you can go and choose out other versions if you wanted to. And you'll also notice that the latest version of Node also includes Node Package Manager, or NPM. And we'll need that for some of our solutions that we're building later on to validate whether or not you have Node included. So you can actually just go in and type node -- version in terminal window, and actually it'll come back with the version number if it's installed. That's the caveat. If you don't have it installed, then it won't come back with anything and you'll know that you have the wrong version. Same thing for NPM, go to npm -- version. And if it's installed, boom, you can get a version that's that you can validate is yours. And we're up and running with the latest versions of Node here. You can also want to have a text editor. Now, my personal preference is VS Code or Visual Studio Code. You go to code.visualstudio.com, and it's an open source software from Microsoft. It's really good. And it will run on all leading OSs. And it allows you just to run and install a really nice text editing tool. And it's really like Notepad on steroids, but it's just really, really good. And then you also are going to be using the Open Weather Map for an API. And so if you do Open Weather Map in Google search, it'll actually show a link for their weather API, and you'll be able to connect that. Here, we're actually just going to go and show what the Open Weather Map website looks like. But across the top, you can see that we have different options, and API is one of those options. We're going to be using that quite a bit in our application. So there's different APIs you can get, such as the current weather, the forecast, and daily forecast for 16 days. And if you click on any one of these, such as the current weather forecast, it'll actually show you what the API will look like. Now, one of the things that you'll need for your API is you need the city name plus your API key. And I'll show you how to get that in a moment. But these are the different types of calls that you can make. All right, let's go back to our terminal window. So we're going to open up VS Code, and we want to go ahead and open up a folder. We're going to create a new folder where we're going to be building our project. It's going to be on the desktop, and we're going to create a new folder here, and we're going to call this folder weather-app. We're going to select that folder and open it. And this will be now the folder that we'll be building our solution in. And then we can get rid of the welcome screen. We don't need that anymore. So let's go ahead and open up terminal window. And this is one of the things you can do is you can actually run terminal window inside of VS Code. Really nice. So let's go ahead and format this folder so that it's actually a Node package manager formatted folder. So npm init, and by default we're running on our folder. And so it's now going to go ahead and create the package JSON file. We're going to name we can give it a name. We can call it Weatherly, but then we can just go with the defaults for the rest of the application. So just kind of keep hitting return. And then what you'll see in the folder is we now have a package.json file, and we've put in the name there, but then we have the rest of the metadata. Index.js is going to be the key file that we're going to build our application from. So let's go ahead and create a file called index.js, and we're going to open that up. Yep. And that make sure that matches up. You got to make sure everything matches up for these files. Just otherwise, if you get it wrong, then your file isn't going to load anything. So let's put in our core constructions. And so we're going to make sure that Express is required. Express is a HTTP server that is really nice to use as part of the MERN framework, MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. We're also going to put in an element called body parser, which gets used with Express. And then we're going to put in a request, and we require request to be installed. And then we're going to make sure that we have these installed in our terminal window. So we're going to do npm install --save express and body-parser and request. This will install everything into our folder. And it's going to go ahead and download the latest versions. And this is one of the benefits of using npm, is that as you are packaging together your application, it will pull out and ensure that the developers all have the latest and greatest. All right, so now we see that our dependencies have been installed. We have everything supporting our requirements. And so let's go ahead and we'll start defining our app. And so our app is going to be an Express app. And we're going to have an API key that we want to reference. And this is going to be from the weather app that we'll be using. And these are just some constants for our application. And app.useExpress static. And we can make it public. All right, so let's create a new folder, and we're going to call that folder public. And inside of public, we're going to create a subfolder. We're going to call this one CSS. This is going to be our styling. And we're going to create another folder called images. This allows us to use body parser to pull in URL encoded elements. So app set view engine, and we're going to use EGS, and EGS is a extended template design for JS that we can use, or embedded JavaScript. And we're going to listen on port 3000. And so we're going to run our server. It's going to be a localhost server, and it's going to run on port 3000. In our console log, we're going to put instructions to tell us that the Weatherly app is listening on port 3000. All right, so we're going to go and we're going to initialize Node.js. We're going to type in node index.js, and this will initialize the app. There we go. You can see that the app is now running on port 3000. So if we come over to our localhost, and an error, can I get? Oh, that's probably because we have two apps running on the same port. So I have to just cancel the other one. And so let's go app.get and put in our function. Render index.js. Oh, that's right. That's right. We'll make sure we're rendering the correct part of our solution. Okay, so let's create a new folder under views. We'll call this one index.egs. And that stands for embedded JavaScript, which is a template model that we can use for rendering our code. Right, so we're just going into our EGS file and putting in our defaults. So I'm going to link to our style guide and CSS. And here's our link, CSS style.css. And we have this in the downloads. You can go ahead and download this. We're going to have a default CSS file that you can use. All right, so under CSS, we'll type in CSS. So we actually have something we can reference. And so let's put in link. And we're going to go ahead and link to some fonts. If you haven't used any of the Google fonts before, they're a great online repository where you can install really, I think they have hundreds of fonts now. And we're going to use Open Sans. Okay. All right. So let's start putting together our content on our page. So we'll put our container. And a form element. So we want to be able to have a post element so we can actually submit what country or what city we're looking to get the weather for, and then we'll have a response. So it's just going to be a text field followed by a button. So put city as the name of the text field. And then the placeholder will be enter city. So that will be actually in the text field. So we refresh. Oh, still getting an error. Let's go back to look at our code. We need to rerun. Let's rerun. So node index.js. And we're still getting an error. So we couldn't find the module EJS, so we need to make sure that we're pulling this into our code correctly. So this npm, oh, that's right, we need to install EJS. So let's install that. There we go. Installed. Let's rerun index.js. There we go. Ba-bum. Very simple page. You can see that we have enter a city. Now that we can go back. All right, so let's go in. And I'm going to put input type ID submit. And this is going to be a submit. And we're going to be looking to get the weather. And that's going to be the text on the button. And we already have some class files already defined in our CSS document. You'll see it in a moment. It's going to be ghost.button. And the class here is going to be ghost-input. Okay, let's rerun that. Index.js. Now you see that we have a button there. We don't have any styling yet. We need to bring that over. So let's go over to our CSS file, and it's blank. But we already have everything already written in a package. And so again, you'll find the complete program here can be downloaded in the details for this video. And you can see that we have all the CSS styling correctly saved. So make sure we save that file. Type in the comment styles are. Let's close out that comment. And so you can go to HTTPS codepen.io and it's /official_naveen/pen/rjkni, and that will give you all of these files. All right, let's rerun everything. So node index.js. All right, so we're starting to get some styling. We have our text field and our button. Now let's go back to VS Code. We're going to add in some more CSS file formatting. You'll see we actually have to pull in a weather JPEG. We'll put that into the images folder here. So we just drop that in. Boom, there we go. There's our nice fluffy cloud. Save that file. You'll see that everything is pulling in correctly for our index.egs file. Let's go back down to terminal window, rerun the index.js node, and now we get a much more pleasant design. So you can actually see the text is in white for the get weather button. And we have that in our base container, which is the first thing that you see on the screen. Okay. All right, so let's go back to index.egs. All right, so what we want to be able to do is put the weather on our screen here. So we're going to update the field set now. So go to styles. And we're going to place in a default style for field set. And of course, we have to go in and rerun the index.js file. You'll just see a little bit more padding around the actual application. And here we go. And we got an error. That's all right. Means that we can fix this. We come in to our solution and our index.js file. And we're going to add in a new feature here that allows us to post. We're going to post and refresh the page when we post. And we will put in the city, and we'll pull that from our input text, which is labeled city. The URL. So I'll just be pulling, this is the structure we need to capture. That's our API call. So here's our URL. Type in the full path. And we're going to have to make some changes here, obviously. So we want to dynamically post in the city name. So let's change that here. We'll put in $, which is the escape key to allow us to put in our own commands. And so we can put in city, and this will allow us to pull it from the input text field for city. And now we need to put in our API key. So let's just reduce that, and we're going to put in the $, and we'll put an API key, which is again pulling from the API key at the top here. So obviously we'll have to put our API in there, but it does allow us, does prevent us from having to rewrite that over and over again, which is good. And then console log body city. Okay, so let's sign in, and oh, we're already signed in, so that's good. So that's my account. But you can sign in with your own. We need to get an API key, so select APIs, and create a key name. So in this one, we're going to call it Weatherly. That's the name of our app. And here we go. Here's our API key that's been created. So we just want to copy that. So I'll put it into Notepad. You will have to generate your own API key, though. If you reuse the one I'm using here, it simply won't work for you because it's tied to the app that I've created. So just go ahead and just render your own API key. Right, so let's go and grab your API. And we go back over to our app. We'll just paste in the API here. And we need character return, so get rid of that. Okay, so now we should be able to dynamically pull from our API. So we'll rerun the code. And let's go over to our Weatherly app. All right, so let's enter a city. Let's type in Bangalore. And here we are in our log. It's pulling in Bangalore. So we know that that's been captured correctly, which is good. Now we're going to write in the commands to complete our application. Okay, so we're going to respond. Okay, we'll render into the index file. And if there's an error, please try again. If not, let's pass the JSON packet into the body of the script. So as you can see, it's a fairly basic application. Allows us to pull and push API content pretty easily. And if there's any error messages, we'll make sure that we tell the user to try again. Save our code. And we'll put the weather response. And this will be city. Oh, with the weather text. And in this weather city. So these are all values we're pulling from the JSON file from the API that we're pulling back. Okay, good. Good, looking good. Make sure everything matches up correctly. We'll send a message to our console log. Looking good. Let's rerun the app. Node index.js. Okay, everything's running correctly. Let's rerun the app. Good. We'll type in Bangalore, hit get weather. And now we have all the information in our terminal window. So by pulling back body, actually pulls back the full JSON packet that we get from the API request. And you can see that we have just different matchups here. So like for instance, you see clouds is a description. We have temperature, and we can then start manipulating all of that content. And so we want to make sure that the value comes back in metric. So we just added in a new value there. So we ran the script. Let's go in and rewrite the application. Type in Bangalore. Because previously, if you don't, then everything comes back in Kelvin. So now we have the temperature has come back in metric, so 28 degrees, not 305 degrees Kelvin, which is great. Because now we can actually start using this content. As you can see, there's a lot of content here, so we can actually really use it to modify our presentation. So let's type in New York to see some additional information and go back to VS Code. And now you see that for New York, we have New York, and just the weather for that. Right, let's go back to our EGS file. And now we can actually start doing pulling in some of the data that we received back from the API call. Alrighty, so let's put in for our weather response. We'll just put in a paragraph here. Okay. So if error is null, okay. So this is the EGS template doing the work. So here's our template. Pulling back the weather information. And it's going to reference the formatting that we have developed already. Okay, let's rerun. Okay, we run the application. Type in Bangalore. And there we are. We have, and we can do, oh, that was just an error message. So you can see that we got our error message correct. So then we're able to pull in the correct messaging for our weather. So we wanted to change the structure, we can certainly do that. And so if we type in New York, it's going to default to New York City. It's 23 degrees with clear in New York. And that's our demo. So finally, let's look at some of the industry trends and why you'd want to learn Node.js. So there are some number of really key things. One of them is that JavaScript simply is just an extremely popular and highly in demand scripting language. Having Node.js is in the top 10 most in demand jobs worldwide. So there's lots of opportunities. We've seen things such as, Node.js, the number of downloads has increased by 40% over the last year. Is just tremendous, the number of people looking to install Node.js, not so much because they're just trying to download and install it, it's because they're actually using it, which is fantastic. More importantly, some of the biggest companies out there are using Node.js, so you can actually get work with them. And we're seeing that just the core value of JavaScript continues to increase. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you see that JavaScript is now the number one programming, scripting, and markup language out there, outside of HTML and CSS. And so just tremendous popularity. And what we're finding is that Node.js developers continue to get more and more salary options. You can see here that in India, the average salary option is around 613,000 rupees, which is just phenomenal. And then in the United States, a mature Node.js developer can be easily looking for a salary of 104 or more thousand a year. So that's it. That's our Node.js tutorial introducing you to Node.js. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions or any comments, please post those below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button, and then you'll get notified when other videos come up. We're constantly adding to our library. So please, if you have any suggestions or content that you see that's missing, let us know, and we'll see about getting videos on that material developed for you. Thanks very much.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.